Welcome to the Embodiment podcast. This show is for you if you see the body as more than a brain taxi. It's for people interested in coming home to the body as a holistic aspect of who we are and how we live. Episodes contain practical tips, exercises you can take away, and interviews with embodiment specialists from around the world. I'm your host, Mark Walsh. On today's episode, we're going to be looking at embodiment books. So, if, like me, you're a bit of a book geek, you're going to love this. Obviously, there's a bit of a contradiction here. Think of embodiment, we don't necessarily think of books and reading, and obviously it's in the practice. I've already done an episode on practice. It's good to have some theory too. You know, I think of this Buddhist saying of theory and practice are like two wings of a bird. Most people tend to overdo the theory. I don't know about you, but it's very easy to order a book off Amazon. If you have an Amazon buying addiction, I would recommend not listening to this podcast. I'm going to send you some juicy books here. Juicy books, lots of really good ones on this field. I will be looking around, recording this in my office/library, so I'll be perusing the shelves, no doubt, later on, once I get past my sort of initial list of obvious ones. So if you're into books, this is, really the place to go, one to listen to. What else? Obviously, I'm going to miss some good ones, I'm sure. Feel free to put in the Facebook group your personal recommendations, ones that I've missed. I'm excluding sort of purely body ones rather than embodied ones. There won't be like anatomy books or sort of movement textbooks, unless they're including sort of psychology and the view of the body as a part of who we are as human beings. Obviously, I have a bias here. There's certain lineages and traditions that I come from. So, no doubt I will miss out some good ones. So this is very personal. It's not just like it's not the definitive, but it's pretty thorough, I think. So let's dive in. We'll do it a little bit by author. Where to start? Let me start with Paul Linden's books, my mentor and a bias here. He's been on the podcast. His book, Embodied Peacemaking, is probably he has a lot of ebooks, which are pretty reasonable. There's some sort of shorter free versions online. His site being in movement.com. By the way, I'm not going to, in the show notes, write every single book because it will take me hours and hours. So listen up and Google what my crazy British accent sounds like. So Embodied Peacemaking. This was really my textbook when I started Embodiment. It's not just for people interested in peace. It's got loads of photos. It's very, very practical. It's a sort of how-to guide and how to run a workshop and all sorts of things like stress management or leadership. Lots of good exercises. That's what I'd recommend for his. If you want something more anecdotal from Paul, his breakfast essay was the one's good. He's got ones on aikido, a really big and very heavy one on trauma, on abuse recovery called Winning is Healing, not for the faint-hearted. And if you're in that field, though, Winning is Healing is a fantastic one. But a good place to start, some of his free ebooks and Embodied Peacemaking. Okay, what else have we got? Let's go Ginny Whitelaw. So one by Ginny Whitelaw and Betsy Wetzig, I believe that's pronounced. So Move to Greatness. So this is one of the core texts of the Embodied Facilitator course. A really good way, a typology. It's a bit like the Four Elements, but not quite. She has her own Phoebe system, it's called. Move to Greatness, really great resource. Lots on practice in there. It's really readable, nuts and bolts. Talks about personality types, character development. A really good one from Ginny. Very practical, very good. I like that one a lot. Let's see, from the body psychotherapy side, Nick Totten's book called Body Psychotherapy. Pretty short, but fairly heavy. Some of my students have said they've struggled to get into that. So, but that's my sort of top pick. From Nick Totten, Totten, top pick from the body psychotherapy. I'll come to more later. What else? Leadership Embodiment by Wendy Palmer. Again, another core text for the EFC course. Really, it's what it says. Leadership and Embodiment. Good section on neuroscience. Practicalities of her model. There's ups and downs to her model. We'll probably have her on at some point. But it's pretty short. It's pretty clear. It's a pretty good read if you're working organisational. Coaching, somatic coaching by Richard Strozzi Heckler, one of the big names in the field. Strozzi's books are all good. Somatic coaching. Kind of short, readable. His leadership dojo, some people like his writing style, some people don't. I've kind of mixed feelings about it. Certainly, though, that his books have lasted the test of time. What else have we got by Richard? So there's a leadership dojo, which is all about leadership, somatics, examples of corporate work. He's got one called Being Human at Work. What else? Oh, Anatomy of Change. That's one of his early ones, which has a lot of his stuff in. So Strozzi's books, particularly if you're interested in embodiment, somatics in business, I really recommend his stuff. So yeah, they're those 5 that I've just said. That's like the core course reading for the Embodied Facilitator course. The ones they have to read. So I've said those 5 first because they give a pretty good spread. Obviously, they're a bit biased towards a sort of martial artsy type people. Well, quite a lot biased actually. Both Ginny, Paul, Wendy, and Richard are all aikidoka. But aikidoka have added a lot to this field. So yeah, they'd be my first 5. Most of those are pretty accessible too, not too huge reads. Body psychotherapy is anyone that's a bit sort of mentally heavy. The rest are all pretty readable in a few hours, pictures in most of them. So that would be my kind of opening set. If you're newer to embodiment, you like this podcast, that would be a pretty good place to start. Okay, what else have we got? Oh yeah, Discovering the Body's Wisdom by Mirka Naster. That's Mirka Knaster. Mirka Naster. That's a great overview of a lot of embodied disciplines. So if you don't know your aikido from your Bowen technique, or your Feldenkrais from your whatever, that's a good place to start. So I recommend Mirka's book as another sort of overview book that's there. What else we've got? Integral Life Practice. So Ken Wilber, getting a bit of an egghead. I got called the Ken Wilber of embodiment the other day. I was most happy with that. I'm not as clever as him, but that's a great overview, and it's sort of more the practice-based one of his. He's got a beautiful book called Grace and Grit, and lots of about his wife's cancer, and very touching book, and lots of other sort of more philosophical ones. But Integral Life Practice is a good like meta model, is how I think of integral, to fit all your embodied practices in. We talked about practice, so you may have heard on the Practice podcast, Mastery by George Leonard. Any of George Leonard's books are kind of classics. What else have we got? Oh, Teaching Yoga. So not just for yogis. This is by Donna Farhi, I think it's said, Farhi. Donna Farhi. I've never met her. So excuse me, Donna, if you're out there. So yeah, that's a really good book on teaching. Ethics as well as in there, so that's a good read. And just generally on teaching, it's hard to find a good book on teaching embodiment. I might have to write one, but that's as near as I've come to one. Oh, classic Stuart Heller, been trying to get him on the show. So Retooling on the Run, stuff on the 4 elements in there too, if we want to do a podcast on that. Yeah, that's a good solid sort of classic book about embodiment. Stuart Heller's got a number of other books out, all of which are worth a read. Pretty easy to get into. What else? Science. So the Science of Embodiment, Richard Wiseman's book called Rip It Up. Richard Wiseman. That's pretty much on the science of embodiment, though he doesn't actually ever use the word embodiment. Good if you're working in business and you want to kind of get some science behind what you do, to look at some of the studies out there. Amy Cuddy's got a book out. Her Presence book, kind of okay. Not, I think she did this great TED talk and it's been a bit overstated since in other ways. But yeah, it's a good read. So I don't want to badmouth it. Anyone that's wrote a book on embodiment's all right by me. It's not the easiest thing. I'm doing it myself right now. What else? How to run a great workshop. It's just a general sort of workshopy one. If you're into running workshops, not particularly embodiment. John Heron's done some stuff on more in-depth stuff on facilitation as well. So they're ones I recommend to my students who are facilitators. And there's general coaching books like, I don't know, Coactive Coaching. I've got a book out, or John Whitmore or whatever. But I want to stick to purely the embodiment ones. Okay, so Bonnie Bainbridge Cohan, she's one of the masters in the field. She's got a beautiful old book out, Bonnie Bainbridge Cohan. The name eludes me, but that is a just really beautiful book. Lots of pictures. I really like that. Don Hanlon Johnson we've got on the show. If you've not heard his one already, his book Bone, Breath and Gesture is good. He's got a new one with I think it's Mariana Kaplan coming out on the psychology of yoga. But he's really learned, really sort of smart guy. He's like the PhD master of embodiment. So any of Don's stuff is worth a read. On the more academic front, I'm not going to talk about, I don't know, Heidegger or the anthropologists that talk about habitats, or there's sort of more academic reading on the subject of embodiment. And the word embodiment is used differently by different people. So, there's embodied cognition books, there's as I said, the sociology or the anthropology stuff like Habitas. We could go back to Heidegger if you really want to do your head in. Nietzsche is a kind of early embodiment author, I think we could say, while we're looking at the philosophical classics. What's that other big one? Oh yeah, Lakoff and Johnson. So they're sort of more philosophical ones who are kind of working in this field too. What else have we got? Some of Wendy's other books, The Intuitive Body by Wendy Palmer, that's pretty good. Oh, Wisdom of the Body Moving by Linda Hartley. That's another sort of dance movement. That's a dance movement therapy kind of classic coming from Body Mind Centering, which is Bonnie Bainbridge Cohen's discipline. Linda Hartley. So, Wisdom of the Body Moving, that's a pretty good read. What else we got? An Unused Intelligence, but that's Andy Bryner, Bryner, and Dorna Markova, Dawna Markova. Readable book on embodiment, lots of pictures, bit dated, not. I think they haven't really got to the heart of it in some ways, but it's pretty interesting if you're like a consultant trainer type. Dance Movement Therapy by Katja Bloom and Roja Shreves, I believe it's pronounced, Katya Bloom. That's another nice little short one on dance movement therapy. So from that side of things, a beautiful one, absolutely beautiful, Emotional Anatomy by Stanley Kellerman. So that is a little inaccessible, but for the pictures alone, it's worth a look. What else? Another George Leonard one on my list here, Silent Pulse. That's about it's quite poetic. It's about rhythm and our nature. So if you heard the podcast on cycles and rhythm and seasons, that's kind of related to that. Gabrielle Roth's got a bunch of books out like Sweat Your Prayers. I don't think her models are that clear. I think it's a great practice, but I don't want to speak ill of the dead, but I'm not that keen on her books, if I'm honest. Not many on the improv world. There's one called Listen, Say Yes and Commit by a friend of mine, actually, Harry Puckering, and his business partner. That's improv principles applied in business. So that's another one I quite like. Again, I've got this slight business emphasis. I imagine there's some very good improv books out there that have nothing to do with organisational work. What is there on play? So Adrian Harris recommended some authors in his podcast whose names elude me now. But if you're interested in like place and eco-psychology and environment, then go back to that podcast and see what Adrian recommended. There's one called The Power of Place by a guy called Gallagher, as in Liam and Noel, and that's on the environment as well. So that's one we sometimes ask students to use. Laban, stuff written by Laban on Laban's kind of the genius of dance and movement, the Einstein of movement they sometimes call him. Laban for All by Jean Newlove and John Dalby, Dalby. That is probably the one I would recommend on Laban movement analysis because it's simple and accessible. Hakomi Method, so it's the body centered psychotherapy. There's a little book by Hakomi. They've got a big one out. It's going to be time. I'm going to have to start grabbing things on my shelf soon. We've got, Hakomi Mindfulness-Centered Somatic Psychotherapy, a comprehensive guide to theory and practice by, Halko Wise, that's Weiss, Greg Johansson and Lorena Monda. If you're looking at body therapy, you want to go into that. They've got a sort of mindfulness influence there, but that's a good book. It's quite big. Who else? Mr. Francis Briers, of course. How dare I? I'm so sorry, Frankie, for leaving you for so long. Frankie's books are great. He's got a little book of Finding Your Way about practice. He's got a book on death. He's got a number of books out. He's even got one about Game of Thrones and the warrior culture within that. So if you look up Francis Briers, Briers on Amazon, you'll find some of my best little embodiment books that are out there. He's got one on the Tao Te Ching, which is fun. We quote from that all the time on my courses. So recommend that. God, trauma books. So Babette Rothschild, Trauma Essentials is good. Her Help for the Helper is also really good. Peter Levine, Levine, has lots of good, he's got some good intro books out. I think it's Waking the Tiger was his famous one. Who else? Basil van der Kolk is really nice, but some of his books aren't a bit difficult to get into. His Body Keeps the Score is one of the best-selling books, though. So, a lot of people like that. There's a great article by that title if you want a sort of short version you can find freely online. No, Basil, that one's okay. So, Body Keeps the Score will be another trauma one. Who else from the trauma field? There's some of the bigger ones. There's the guy who invented trauma releasing exercises. He's got a book out that's workable. There's his books on tapping and all that kind of stuff. Yes, there's loads of stuff on trauma out now. Trauma for yoga teachers. I haven't seen a really good trauma for yoga teachers one, but there's at least sort of beginning stuff out there on trauma. So there's some things I'd recommend. Right, I think it's time to hit the bookshelf here. So slow down my ranting, if nothing else. Let's see, what can I see from here? What is your body saying? That's quite a nice one. Oh, book on idiokinesis. That's a lovely practice. There's one here by, who's that by? Andre Bernard, Wolfgang Steinmüller and Ursula Stricker. A slight Germanic influence, one might imagine. What else? Oh, there's another one of Strozzi's on the shelf, In Search of the Warrior Spirit, about his work with the Green Berets. That's quite an interesting read. What else is The Life We Are Given by Linden Murphy. That's another early classic, though a bit dated now. What else have we got? I'm just looking at my shelf here. I've got a big library of these embodiment books. Sometimes my students come round and they stay in the spare room and they sleep in the spare room and get caught in it. Oh, Everybody is a Body. That's a good one. Grab that. Stud and Cox. I'm sort of shouting at my mic from across the room now, so I hope you can hear me okay. What else have we got? Energy Medicine by Oshman. That's on the scientific side of the energy type stuff. A good read. What else? Oh, The Dance of Becoming. That's another good Stuart Heller one. Wild card for you here. It's a lot like Dancing and Aikido Journey. Terry Dobson. He was one of the original Aikido people that found I think the only Westerner. Maybe there's a French guy who studied with the founder of Aikido. So that's a bit different. It's got beautiful pictures in. Journey to Center by Tom Crum. Not bad. A bit dated. Bodies in Revolt by Thomas Hanna. He was one of the granddaddies of the field. He talks about Merleau-Ponty. He's another one of the sort of philosophical founders of the field. Obviously Reich. I haven't found anything by Reich that I found that easy to read. But this one, Bodies in Revolt, A Primer in Somatic Thinking by Thomas Hanna, Hanna. That's a bit of a classic if you want to go kind of a bit old school there. That's kind of rich. Lots in that one, say. Oh, we've got the famous Dan Millman here. So, Body, Mind, Mastery, Creating Success in Sport and Life. He was the author of the Way of the Peaceful Warrior, which I have mixed feelings about, but it's it's another good book on learning and early embodiment kind of book, worth a look. Mark Johnson, The Body and the Mind, The Bodily Basis of Meaning, Imagination and Reason. Another slightly impenetrable, more philosophical one. Not sure I'd recommend that, but unless you're interested in very in-depth things. Oh, Tim Warnicker's another Aikido-based one, Leading People the Black Belt Way by Tim Warnicker. Haven't read that in a few years, but that's a nice little book on leadership from someone that's got a strong Aikido background. One here called The Absent Body by Drew Leder, Leder. So that's again slightly more philosophical, slightly more sort of musings and I think the meaning of the body through different ways. Those of you that like that kind of thing. Got another old school classic here by Alexander Lowen, The Way to Vibrant Health. So he was really one of the grandfathers of this movement. So it's a bit old school, but bioenergetics kind of stuff. So it's worth a look. Okay, I'm at risk getting drawn into my own bookshelf and this entire podcast just being a silent podcast because I peruse through all my books. So I'll avoid doing that. The one thing I would say is books are good, but sometimes video are better. Video is better, should I say? On the YouTube channel we have that's got millions of hits is well worth a look. It's got literally 11 million hits. So there's a YouTube channel on Embodied Yoga Principles and another My Just Embodiment channel, and that's well worth a look, because sometimes seeing video on this stuff is easy. There's other online resources. People like Dylan Newcomb, his Uzazu has some online stuff for that. That's Uzazu. So Dylan's stuff is very good online. So talk about meditation books briefly in terms of the body particularly. So there's one called The Body by Paramananda. So that's Paramananda. That's a very short guide to mindfulness in the body, kind of light. Martine Batchelor's Meditation for Life, full of nice pictures and very readable. Thich Nhat Hanh, I'm not going to spell that, is worth a look. Again, very accessible mindfulness books. Jon Kabat-Zinn, the sort of founder of modern mindfulness, obviously quite scientific in that. Pema Chodron, more kind of heart-led. That's Pemachodron. The Ladybird Book of Mindfulness is also funny and worth a look. And Shinzen Young, if you want to go a bit deeper, I recommend his stuff, the Science of Enlightenment. I think his online course, and it's like an ebook, like an audiobook, and I think it's a paper copy now. Yeah, it is. Noah Levine's sort of punk Buddhist alternative is pretty good. There's one more. Oh yeah, Wake Up to Your Life by Ken MacLeod. So that is also very good. A bit more in depth, slightly Tibetan kind of style to it. So they're the ones that, if I had to take one book with me on a solitary, year-long retreat, I might well take Ken's book, for example, or Shinzen Young's book, one of the two, a bit more in depth. They're the first embodiment books I'm recommended. In terms of what else is out there, so a couple I wouldn't recommend, but I'm just going to pass them over in silence. There's probably many, many more good ones that I've simply forgotten, however. So, apologies if you're one of the authors, and feel free to say in the Facebook group about the ones I've forgotten. Top picks. I'm looking through the guests, actually, we've either had on or will have on, to think of one. So, Jamie Catto we've had on. So his book on creativity is very good. Look up Jamie Catto, CCTTO, into creativity. We have Brooke McNamara on, who writes a lot of sort of embodied Zen poetry. So her stuff is worth a look if you're interested in that. Let's see. I've mentioned Hanlon Johnson. In terms of our guests, making sure I'm not rudely missing any of our guests. Okay, cool. I think I'll leave it there, actually. As I said, for me, it's about practice, not just about reading, but it's nice to have some reading sometimes, isn't it? Like this podcast, it's nice to have some information as well as to look at our practice. Let me know what I should add to my list. So, signing out for now. If you enjoyed this episode, subscribe to get more. If you'd like to help us build the Embodied Tribe, leave a review on iTunes or share this on your social media. If you're interested in training globally, sign up to receive the newsletter at embodiedfacilitator.com. Until next time, welcome home to the body.